Welcome to the Confessions Podcast. I'm Cindy Wagman.
And I'm Jess Campbell. We're two former in-house nonprofit pros turned coaches and consultants to purpose-driven organizations.
After years of building up our separate six-figure businesses from scratch, we've thrown a lot of spaghetti at the wall and have lived to see what sticks.
We're on a mission to help other nonprofit coaches and consultants looking to start or scale their own businesses past the six-figure mark by pulling back the curtain.
Whether you're still working inside a nonprofit and thinking of one day going out on your own, or you've been running your consulting business for years, you understand that working with nonprofits is just different. We're giving you access to the business leaders who serve nonprofits as their clients. You know, the people who truly get it.
No more gatekeeping, no more secrets. This podcast is going to give you an inside look at what running a successful nonprofit coaching and consulting business looks like. Basically, we're asking people how much money they make, how they get paid, and what has and hasn't worked in their businesses.
Listen in as these leaders share their insights, their numbers, and the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to building a nonprofit coaching or consulting business. We're going to empower you to make the power moves that give you the income and freedom you set out to create from day one.
You ready? Let's go.
So very recently, I had a number of consulting clients or my coaching clients who are consultants come to me with the challenge of cash flow. They're making good money, but they're not able to actually make it work for them in their business and paying themselves and paying all their bills. And so I'd love for you to tell me a little bit about the value of really being able to see your financial situation and keep track of it in a meaningful way so that you can pay yourself, basically.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I love this question. I think the number one thing people think about budgets and cash flow, and it scares them to no end. And the problem with it is that we have this awful vision of creating spreadsheets and putting numbers in and trying to make them match and trying to make them add up and trying to forecast what's going to happen in the future according to what happened in the past. And it's so broken that nobody wants to do it. And so what the system that really, really works is based on, anything based on this idea of profit first, setting up buckets for different amounts of money for different expenses so that you can look at your bank statement, you can look at your bank account, and you can see what you can spend. It answers cash flow, it answers budgeting, and it's super, super simple.
We love simple budgeting. And today on the Confessions with Jess and Cindy podcast, it's my pleasure, our pleasure to welcome Jayne Dykstra to the podcast. Jayne is the founder and CEO of Zetique that does bookkeeping for small businesses, maybe mid-sized businesses. She's my bookkeeper, has been since day one. And this approach has changed the game for me. So let's pedal it back a little bit and let's talk about what this budgeting model or system is and why we should care about it.
Yeah. Okay. So the basics of it are you take your income, so all of the money that comes into your business from anywhere, right? And you say, okay, what am I spending this money on and in what percentages? You can look back over a period of time and you can say, okay, my employee percentage is like 20% of my income. And so you set up a bank system where you're taking the income and you're automatically placing it into different bank accounts that are labeled specifically for their job. Okay. One of my big things is that I hate lazy money. And so giving your money a job, knowing exactly what it's for is really, really beneficial. So you take your income, you split it into these different buckets. You say, this is my HST bucket, this is my income tax bucket, this is my employee bucket, these are my, operating expenses buckets, and this is my special projects bucket or my profit bucket or whatever, however you want to break it down, whatever is important to you. And then every time the money comes in, you flow it into these different bank accounts and you open up your bank account and you can see exactly what you have for each of those expense accounts.
So I do this, full disclosure. And I actually think it's helpful for people to understand like what it looks like in someone's business. So what I do is I have my incoming revenue account. So all the money comes into that account. And then about twice a month, I'll go in and I'll look at that balance and then I'll plug it in. I have a little calculator in a spreadsheet that just tells me what's 20% of, I put that amount, then what's, can't remember the percentages, but like, let's say 10% goes into my profit, 13% goes into my taxes, payroll is X percent, whatever percentages all add up to 100%. And then I can see how much, like I'm not going to pull from my personal payroll to pay for Facebook ads. But if I have money sitting in my operating account, that's where it will come from. And that's where I can see, okay, I can afford this right now. And it's hugely helpful for me as a numbers person, but I also think, and Jayne maybe can talk about working with people who aren't numbers people and how to make it really easy for them.
Yeah, absolutely. The idea and the numbers can really scare people away. But once it's set up, it flows so easily. Like Cindy said, you set up a spreadsheet or you have somebody set up a spreadsheet for you. I do this for clients all the time, right? So I set up a spreadsheet for them. All they have to do is plug the number. How much is in your bank account? Put it in the top of that spreadsheet. You open up your bank account and literally 5 minutes later, you've transferred all of the money into the proper accounts. You know exactly what you're looking at and you can see your cash flow. It's so easy. Once it's set up, it's so easy.
You guys keep saying that. It's so easy. It's so easy. And I'm like I'm just feeling the like tight, the like jacket tighten on me. Okay. So guess which one of Cindy and Jess is not the numbers person? I have some very elementary questions. So my first question is when you were talking about the different accounts and like, while that nightmare of a job of setting them up, I'm sure takes some people no time at all, even that hurdle. Once we're over that hurdle, okay, we have our account. Great. Mm-hmm. My first question is like for nonprofit consultants that have such variable month to month income, how do you ensure things like payroll get met every single month? And then does that also mean, for example, like in your payroll account, that almost every month that number is getting close to like zero until you get paid again? And are we okay with that? Like, does that not make us nervous? That makes me nervous.
Yeah, I love this question because this system actually works best for people with variable income because it's based on percentages. So when you look at a history of your business over the course of 2022, I spent 15% of my income on payroll, okay, as using your example. And so that 15%, as soon as you get money into your account, you take 15%, you put it into this payroll account. So let's say 1 month you make no money, right? You have nobody pays you that month, but that 15% is sitting there from the previous years, from the previous months, from the previous payments. And then the next month when, 6 of your clients pay you and all of a sudden you have $20,000 in your account, then you take 15% of that, you put it into that payroll account, and it just sits there until you need to use it. And so this system is actually way, way more easy on your heart and your brain and your stress levels than anything else for people with variable income, because it evens things out. It like equalizes everything so that you're always sure that you're going to have the right amount of money. Now, just as a disclaimer on that, it does take a few months to get it into the proper flow of things. Cindy probably can't remember that because she did it so long ago. But once it's flowing and once it's set up, then it really, really is very easy to maintain.
Okay, great. And then my other question here, and maybe this is just like, oh, I got to let this go. You're saying like 15% of your income. I know you're just like using it as an example, but is there any like industry standards so that we know what we should be spending? Because I know in my business, payroll makes up a lot more than 15% of it by the time I pay out my staff and things like that. So I'm just wondering, is it strictly mine based on my history, or is there something that, is there like a range at which you should be falling into, or?
No. It's completely based on your numbers. You can take like, just as a very extreme example, right? You can take a service-based industry and you can take a product-based industry, and you're going to have like such different percentages that are set aside for anything, right? A product-based industry could spend, 40% of their income on, regenerating their stock, right? Whereas a service-based industry has like way, way less expenses for, that kind of thing, but maybe more employee costs. So it really depends on your personal business, your own business, and setting the numbers up would be based on your history, right? Your numbers, what happened in your business.
Just because we love transparency on this podcast, I can share with you what mine are as like a business where it's just me. I take 15% of whatever comes in that goes directly to my profit account. And I try not to touch that until it's time to give myself a bonus when I want the money out. My payroll, I put in 60%. And then operating, we call OpEx, is 25%. And that covers like my virtual assistant, the professionals I hire, like my accountant, bookkeeping, is Jayne, insurance, any training programs I invest in, all my technology like G Suite or whatever it's called now, Zoom, ConvertKit, any advertising, all that kind of stuff. So that all goes into my OpEx. So those are my percentages. It's 15, 60, and 25. I also have a tax account that I keep separate, which is based on Ontario, Canada. We pay 13% HST, it's called. I can't remember what the H stands for. Anyways,
harmonized. It's harmonized
sales tax.
Sales tax,
I was like, it's not good. It's not, yeah. But that comes off the top, and then the percentages are based on what's left over after that.
Yeah. And I
That's
mean,
super
I can talk
helpful.
about mine as well if you want to hear from the bookkeeping side, because we have large payroll as well in our industry. So we put aside 55% for payroll and another 20% for payroll deductions, just to make sure that all of that. So like you can see the payroll is really high in our side of things. Operating expenses are really low. So I've got 5% for operating. And I've got 20% for development, because we're working on a whole bunch of things in the back end and we want to make sure that we have the money for that. So, yeah. And then, of course, like the HST is taken off the top, and that's 13%.
This is really helpful. Let's walk it back to that hurdle, because I imagine that this getting started is what holds people back from starting this process that you folks have said is so easy once you just get it set up. So let's talk about getting it set up. And, is this something, can I open like 8 different checking accounts online? Do I have to go inside my bank? I know I'm based in the States, you two, well, Jayne's actually based all over the place, but, so I imagine not having to walk into a bank is very important in Canada. So like, let's talk about initiating that biggest hurdle and how do we overcome it? Is this something our assistants can do for us? Like, give us all the hacks to like get this done as quickly as painless free as possible.
Yeah. One of the things that I always say to every business owner is, any kind of job that falls to the bottom of your to-do list is probably something that you should outsource, because if you are like looking at it with fear and loathing, then it is never going to get done. And so if you have a good team that's supporting you for these things, then it's really important. Now, I know Cindy loves her numbers, and having her having a bookkeeper is not something that she needed to have, but she wanted to have it because she wanted to have the time to invest in developing her business. And so having somebody who can help you walk through that, if that's your fear, is really important. And if it's not your fear and you think it's exciting, then it is very easy to set up. Like I know Cindy works all out of one bank. So she walked into her bank or probably did it online and just set up a whole bunch of different checking accounts and savings accounts. I use two different banks. One is a purely digital bank, and one is a more bricks and mortar bank in Canada. And I have my accounts split up between those two different banks. But the setup is really about taking the time or having somebody take the time with you to look at your numbers, to look at your percentages, and to get that sorted out. I do have a program that I work with our clients. I call it bucket budgeting. And part of that is even looking at, where do your money ideas come from? Because they affect how we look at our money. Where do your money ideas come from? How does that influence your decision making? What kind of padding do you need in your numbers and your savings? And then what are your goals and what are your needs and your wants for your business? And taking all of that and then putting this system together, because based on all of that conversation, you can get a really good idea about, okay, this is what I need my money to do. And then it's just about percentagizing everything, which also can make people go a little bit over the edge, and then just starting to use it.
I love that, because yes, this is one of the very first things I outsourced in my business. Because I can do it doesn't mean I should do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think this is a surprise to anyone. Like, we need to, as we grow our businesses, we need to figure out what we can outsource to optimize our growth and our potential. And to me, this was one of the first things. I don't need to be checking receipts. I don't need to be identifying what expenses fall under what category and stuff like that. So yes, I like to project my income and I play with my numbers, but I don't manage any of the day-to-day bookkeeping or any of that.
I just want to jump in because so I have a bookkeeper as well. She's not, I don't think, versed in profit first, just to explain the other side that is me. God love this person. She will send me reports. I don't even open them. She's like, did you get paid yet? I'm like, I don't want to go track that person down for another invoice, which, this is how adverse I am. And so I think that Cindy's so right. You don't have to do everything in your business, but as someone that even recognized that, I still don't even
you need to.
So I think maybe I need to, Jayne will have.
You need to talk to your bookkeeper. You need to tell your bookkeeper. I just had this conversation with another client. I said, your bookkeeper is not doing enough for you. You need to ask them to actually manage following up on your invoices. So your systems and the people around you can do those things for you that you don't have to do. If you don't want to follow up on invoices, automate that, which you probably have some of. But then
now I have an amazing new assistant.
Yeah.
She's like a bulldog. Everyone just getting paid all the time now.
Yeah. Let people do it for you.
Yeah.
And let your systems do it for you, because that should not be keeping you up at night. That is just not, we all feel bad.
Just so we're clear, it doesn't keep
care.
me up at night. I don't know.
Until you don't get paid, right? And not you, but this is, I said, I've seen this with a lot of clients recently, which is they feel bad asking for their nonprofit clients to pay on time or following up with them, and then they don't pay themselves. And it's this is why you get support and systems in your business, so that you don't have to pay attention to these things that, are an energy suck and bad juju. This is not what you want to spend your time doing.
Yeah. And also in one of the conversations I have often with small business owners is to just get rid of the people in your life who are not supporting you the way that you need them to be, right? So I have this conversation about accountants all the time, right? Because people come into me and they're like, oh, my accountant said, oh, what a nice hobby you have, and I'm just you need a new accountant, right? You need somebody who's going to be proactive on your side and working with you for your goals. And so sometimes it's painful. It's like ripping off a Band-Aid, like anything. But, it's really important to have the correct support, like the bulldog who's going to fight for your invoices for you, right? You need, if that's not something you want to do, find somebody who's going to do it for you.
We are back with another round of rapid fire questions, this time featuring our bookkeeping maven, Jayne. You ready to play?
I am.
Okay, so we didn't get into it too much in your episode, but you are a digital traveling nomad who's lived all over the place. Do you have any idea where you're going next?
We're currently just outside of Barcelona, and I think we'll be here for a little bit. We do have a car rented, and we're going to do a road trip around Spain, not next week, but the following. So that's going to be exciting.
Oh, that's super exciting. If you get a chance to hit San Sebastian, it's amazing.
Mhm.
What is the most fun thing you've ever spent money on?
Spent money on, oh my goodness. I have to say plane tickets. As a digital nomad and somebody who loves travel, every time I buy a plane ticket, I'm like, get tingly. I just love the notion of going somewhere else.
Absolutely. And we've asked on this podcast quite a bit about morning routines, but what's your wind down routine?
Ooh, so I have a 6-year-old, and he loves playing games. And actually, we sit as a family basically every evening. I have a glass of wine. We play whatever the favorite game of the moment is. And that's like been our wind down for the past, I don't know, good going on a year. And it's really fun actually.
Nice. Cool. Thanks for playing.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. And someone who has no emotional or like connection, she's just like, this is my task and I'm doing the task.
Yeah.
One thing I want to talk about, you said this word like buffer or cushion a couple of times. And I'm wondering how you figure that number out. If there is like an industry standard of what is something to aim for. I know, at least in the entrepreneurial world, I hear a lot of things like you should have 6 to 12 months of, operating cash like stuck in a bank account. And I'm like, maybe someday. And so I'm just wondering if you have any advice or any tips or information on how to help us figure out how to start that or what number to aim for.
This is something that is really, really personal. Okay. One person's buffer is another person's nightmare. This is something that has to really be thought about by you personally. I have clients who they freak out if they don't have a year worth of money to support them personally sitting in a bank account, right? For me, my tolerance level is really, really low for that. I want to use my money. I want to send it out to work for me and doing other things. And there's a whole range in between there. But building up that buffer is something that you can create within the system, right? So the income comes in and you just say, I want to start setting aside a small percentage every month, every pay that is going to create this buffer zone. And it doesn't have to be 10%, right? You can set it up as a 1%, right? And even if you're only making $5,000 a month, right? Or $500 a month, you're setting aside that 1% on a regular basis. And then you're just watching it grow. So it's sitting there, it's growing, it's getting bigger and bigger. It's going to alleviate that stress of, I should do this.
That's really, really helpful. Cindy, what do you do in your business for that? What kind of buffer do you set aside?
So I let sort of things accumulate throughout the year, but then I actually I get into the numbers a little bit more. For example, I'm at my fiscal year end right now, and I'm on a spending spree. You know this, Jess, because I've just invested in a few big things because we had a really good year and better than I thought. So I just let the things accumulate in those accounts. And now I have half a month left. I know what my expenses are for the rest of the month. And I met with Jayne last week and we went over the numbers and the profit and loss, which is because what's in my bank account, it's not necessarily the same thing as what's on the books of my corporation, which I pay taxes for. So first I looked, okay, like where are my books and where's my cash? And it turns out I wanted to sort of spend down. so that on the books, I'm actually not profitable this year. So I don't owe any taxes to the government. And so I'm making investments in the business that I don't always budget for, but now that I have the budget, I'm doing that. But I also have looked at how much money I want now that I know, like, I'm in the red, I guess, so to speak, with my profit and loss statement, and I won't be owing taxes. I then also look at, okay, what do I need to cash flow? I would say the next 3 months. My number, I'm very detailed though. Like, I actually calculate every single month how much revenue, what are my expenses, and at the end of the month, what's left over, and carry that forward. So I know what my next actually year looks like at this point based on projections. It's not 100% accurate, but I find comfort in this. And so I just make sure that, like, I look forward that year, and I don't need to accumulate a year's worth of revenue, but I need to make sure there's no months where I dip below my cash flow project.
And I just want to add to that too, because I'm sure not all of your listeners are incorporated either, right? And so it does work differently for a corporation and for somebody who would be a sole proprietor, because for Cindy, she pays herself a payroll. So she's on payroll. She doesn't have to worry about what's for me, right? But one of the things that sole proprietors and small business owners often don't do is they don't pay themselves. They're like undercharge. They spend all of the money that comes in on expenses, and they never end up paying themselves. And so working into this system too, how much is for me and how much is for my income tax is really important when you're a sole proprietor, because the last thing you want is when taxes are due, and that's just around the corner, is to get this massive tax bill that you're not prepared for because your profit and loss says, or because your income minus your expenses says you made this much money, but it's not actually anywhere to be found. So what you can do with the system is you can say, okay, I'm going to pay myself 20%. I'm going to set aside 10% for taxes, or whatever that amount, whatever those amounts work out to. And you're just, squirreling it away so you don't have to have as big of a buffer, because it's actually already sitting there. It's already being saved for that purpose.
This is maybe taking this conversation to like intermediate now, but I'm curious, like, to just go into this a little bit deeper, because I'm curious how you work in partnership with accountants. I mean, are you a bookkeeping and an accounting firm, or are you simply bookkeeping that then you pass everything off to an accountant? I work with an accountant. She's not a bookkeeper, that they're like separate, which is probably like something I should remedy. But I'm just curious how that, if you need both, if you don't need both.
Yeah, it's a great question. I get this question a lot, actually, is just like, what's the difference? Like, why? What do they actually do? And so my simple answer to that is a bookkeeper is somebody who takes all of the day-to-day stuff, organizes it, and so that you can see exactly what's going on in your business on a regular basis. And an accountant is somebody who is a specialist in the laws of tax. So they're going to take those numbers. Like when we wrap up Cindy's year end, we're going to have all of the numbers in order. We're going to hand them over to the accountant. And then the accountant's going to look at kind of like a higher end picture of, according to the laws of the land, this is what we should do. This is how we should treat this. This is what we should move forward into the next year, et cetera, et cetera. And so working with those two people is important for your day-to-day, as well as to make sure that you're not overpaying or underpaying on your taxes, right? Do they have to be the same person? Do they have to be the same firm? I absolutely don't think so. Our company only does bookkeeping, and we work with lots of different accountants, and a lot of the accountants don't offer bookkeeping services because they do have that, they have that love for rules and law, and we have a love for dealing with the people, dealing with the numbers on a regular basis, organizing. So it doesn't have to be the same person, for sure.
I love it.
In fact, I think it's better if it's not the same person, because then you get two different perspectives on things as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. as we start to wrap up our call, I want to ask you two things. Number one, we didn't even ask you, like, how did you get into this? I mean, how did you fall in love with numbers such a
Yeah,
way?
this is actually a really good story. I have a very varied background. I'm an educated teacher. I worked and lived abroad a ton. And I moved back to Toronto, and I was staying with a friend of mine, and I didn't have a job. I was unemployed at the time and moved into Toronto, and it's very expensive. And my friend was working for a photography agency, and her boss, who was on mat leave, were the only two. And she was like, I have to be out running errands and doing a whole bunch of shoots and stuff today. Can you just go to the office and let the bookkeeper in? And I was like, sure. So I started chatting with the bookkeeper. We got along really well. She's an older lady. She's still a friend of mine, and I still like hang out with her all the time. And we started talking, and then I was like, I'm unemployed. Can I come and work with you? And she took me under her wing and she started training me. Then I did some courses and stuff at George Brown, and then I was like, I love this. And then a friend said, can you do my bookkeeping? Can you do my bookkeeping? And the business was born. And now, I mean, we have 12 employees now. And yeah, it's been an amazing journey, but it was purely accidental, I would say.
That is amazing. And
Yeah.
congratulations. You all are
Yeah.
booming.
Yeah.
Oh my
It's
gosh. And I
really
bet you're going to
fun.
be even more booming when this episode releases. Which is so exciting. Okay, so then for my last question, but Cindy, like I know I'm asking all the questions here. You talked about you love making your money work. You love
Mhm.
putting your money to work, I think is how you put it.
Yeah.
What is one thing that you think small business owners could be doing more efficiently, more powerfully to make their money work for them?
Look at your money. Just open your bank account and look at your money. I mean, one of the things that holds everybody back is that they don't look at it. And when they look at it, people have no idea what it's for. So if you open your bank account and you're like, I see $5,000 or $20,000 or $125,000, and you're looking at it and you're like, I don't know what that's for, then you need to come up with a system to give it a job. Because money, if it's just sitting around, it's losing value, right? With inflation and all of the things that are happening, money just loses value from what you worked, like you worked for it. Came into your orb, and then if you just let it sit, it's just losing its value. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that putting money into a savings account is letting it sit and not do anything, right? As long as you have it in a savings account for a purpose, then it's absolutely fine to let it sit, right? If you're investing in it for, saving for a down payment for a house or for a vacation, or, you're saving for it for taxes or whatever, if it's sitting there, but you can look at it and you can be like, that 20,000 is for this, then it has a purpose, right? But if you just open your bank account and you're like, I don't know if I can afford to take any of this out. I don't know if I can afford to pay my MasterCard. I don't know if I can afford to pay my taxes. I don't know what this money is for. Then you need to start figuring out a system to give it a job, because until it has that job, that purpose, you worked for it and now it's just sitting there doing nothing for you.
And I feel like that's talking in a lot of best case scenarios, right? Like you have $100,000 sitting in your savings account. What are we doing with that? But I also think looking at the numbers, this is one thing that has helped me. The one time a year my accountant forces me to put all my expenses together is, are you charging enough? And
Yes.
it's really black and white when you're not. And that might be the motivation you need to bump your prices up and to charge your worth, or to do a different model in your pricing. I know for me, that was the motivating factor when I put those numbers to paper. So I do agree on everything you're saying. And it pays to get organized, because I'm over here thinking, I look at the numbers from like a marketing standpoint. Like I would never send an email without reviewing my open and click rates and all those things. But those are the kind of numbers I get all excited about. These other ones, just for whatever reason, I got to reframe that. So thank you. Yeah. How can people get in touch with you? Jayne, the Profit First Master.
Oh my goodness. I'm not even, but I love it. This is the thing is I love, and like, I'm sure Cindy can talk to this too, just about how much easier it just makes looking at your money and understanding what you can afford and what you can't afford. But to get in touch with me, website, zetique.com, ZETIQUE.com. And yeah, all the information is there. So, and even Cindy's on there.
Yeah, don't be afraid of your numbers. This is like so empowering to help you grow your business and pay yourself more. So, thank you so much, Jayne. Obviously, I'm a huge fan and really appreciate you sharing all this with our listeners.
Love
Thank you.
Thank you again for listening to the Confessions podcast for nonprofit coaches and consultants. If you enjoyed today's episode, which I sure hope you did, you can show your support in one of 3 ways.
Number 1, post a screenshot of this episode to your Instagram stories or LinkedIn profile and tag Cindy and I so we can repost you.
Number 2, share this podcast with a fellow nonprofit coach or consultant.
And number 3, leave a positive review on Apple Podcasts so we can continue to grow and reach new listeners.
And of course, make sure you subscribe so you can get the latest and greatest interviews as they drop every Thursday.
And to our fellow nonprofit coaching and consulting friends, remember, we're an open book and here to answer your burning biz questions.
See you next time.